Welcome back, everyone. I'm T,
And I'm Nessa.
and together we are the Casual Fangirls. Of course, we're back to chat about the latest episode of HBO's House of the Dragon, the Game of Thrones prequel that dives deeper into the history of the Targaryen dynasty. And boy, what a dynasty it is. Okay.
Yeah.
Nessa, speaking of, do you think you could marry your uncle?
Definitely, absolutely not. But then again, none of them look like Matt Smith. So, I'm joking, guys. I
I mean,
kid.
that's a good point. Your uncle does not
It's
look like
us
Matt
is wrong.
Smith. But it seems like there are people out there that probably could and probably would if given the chance. And that gets us to this week's episode, King of the Narrow Sea. But before we dive into it, Nessa, I'd like to get your overall reaction of the episode before we dig into the details. What did you think of it?
It was an amazing episode. As we were both watching, we're like texting you, like, oh no, damn, girl, ooh, right? But throughout the whole episode, all I could keep thinking about was like perception versus reality. It was just
Mm,
like everybody had their perception of what was going on, whether you're talking about Rhaenyra's perception of how people feel about her versus how they really feel about her. What do we really know about Damon's inner feelings versus what his actions that he's taking? What is the realm gonna think after this vile accusation, right? So it's a lot of perception versus reality that's going on in this episode, and I thought it was masterfully done. It was beautiful, so many different moving parts, but they were all working together. And it was a great episode. It was a fun episode. It had me at the edge of my seat. So, what more do you want from TV? What were your thoughts? What was your experience?
So, as you said, you and I were texting each other during. I was maybe 5 to 10 minutes ahead of you, I think.
Yeah,
Because just based off of like when our like what no like started popping up in the
I
chat.
had to get my snacks.
That's fair. That's definitely fair. I haven't had a reaction to an episode like this probably since The Long Night. Watching spoiler, um, Arya come in with the dagger we saw in this episode, and then before that probably would have been like Winds of Winter when spoiler the set blew up, and then 10 minutes later. Tommen took a tumble out the window, right? So when I say I was standing up and down, jumping up and down, pointing at the screen. Like I was
Yeah.
so energetic for this episode. So like Nessa said, super fun, super saucy, super spicy, super hot. And the theme that
Mm,
I just kept thinking about was duty versus desire.
mm,
And this has been a theme that we've been seeing in a lot of the episodes. It's kind of the through line of the season, I think, is probably what we're going to wind up noticing in hindsight. But it was just right on Front Street here, talking about pleasure, talking about doing what you want, talking about having to fulfill a role. The women in this episode talked about that a lot, and we saw
yeah.
some of that in this episode. We'll talk about that later. So this episode again was fun, but it really hammered home and showed you, instead of just hearing it in exposition constantly, we got to see firsthand that duty versus desire dichotomy that the characters in the story are dealing with constantly. I really enjoyed it.
Oh, it was a good time.
Yeah, it was a good time. So let's dive into it. But before we do, Nessa, can you give anyone watching a spoiler warning?
All right, guys, this is the part of the show we give you the spoiler warning. If you're new here, what T and I do is we go through the plot points of the stories, we discuss our feelings, any significant connections to real life, or the story that we made watching, right? And so we freely speculate about what could happen, what might happen, what we think gonna happen. That being said, if you haven't watched this or previous episodes of House of the Dragon or Game of Thrones, because that's up for discussion as well, you're welcome to stay. For sure, it's a free country. But just definitely know that we are going to spoil the story for you. So Make your decision now. Take a beat. Okay, so let's dive in. Kick us off.
Ready to get started. So this is episode 4 entitled King of the Narrow Sea. So the episode starts out with Rhaenyra on a tour of the kingdom, hearing the proposals of the realm's most eligible bachelors, both old and young. She quits her tour early, and on her way back to King's Landing, her boat is grazed by a dragon on its way to King's Landing as well. A red dragon we've seen before. Has Damon finally come back home? We'll get to that in a second. But first, let's pause. Nessa, how did you feel about witnessing Westeros's version of The Bachelorette?
Oh, you mean for the love of Rhaenyra? Nira? My girl Nira was out here. First of all, she looked amazing.
She did.
That dress was everything. That red dress was awesome. It was hilarious. It was pure comedy. She looked bored as hell, like she did not want to be there. No one was living up to her standards at all. It's just a bunch of dudes lining up just to be like, well, I have this and I did that and I helped your family and all these. And it was just like, ugh, are we really doing all this? So, I mean, I think there should have been somebody should have been there to be like, all right, let's cut to the chase here. Like, no, 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 yes, maybe. Okay, somebody was needed to vet everyone before they got to the princess. Like, come on
That was really my thought when watching this. I was like, what was the screening process for this? Like, what, who let these people waste everybody's time? Like, I just don't understand. You just said anybody in the kingdom can come up and state their claim for the princess's hand. That feels like way too open access for my liking.
I think
uh
it's pretty much if you're from a noble house, then they don't care. Like, they're not gonna question it. Is what it
Listen,
is. So it's just like,
what I'm
you were
saying is
Blackwood, you were Bracken, cool.
what I'm
Pull
saying
up.
is they needed to get somebody's parents from that matchmaker show on Netflix. What is it called? The Indian matchmaker. They need to get
Love
somebody's
it.
parents, get them Google, and start making a list that does not include some old dude offering a dry moat and some super young dude with a lot of heart, but still way too young. Like, come on, we just need to get
Listen,
this together.
my boy came up and showed out. They was trying to clown him.
He ain't no punk.
And you know what it was too? Like, I thought she was like genuinely kind of moved by him. Like, but then it just turned out she was totally like annoyed by him altogether. But I was just like, damn, this little boy got heart. Like, he out here pleading his case. He was like, you're gonna have a nice soft life with me. I'm like, I'm sold. I'm sold.
And he held his own. He was ignoring the dude until he called him a craven, and he was like, "Oh no, now I gotta kill you." And you know it looks
Yeah,
like he did. So there's
took him
that.
out. Said a little boy won. I was like, damn.
Yep, he did. So it turns out that Uncle Damon is back, and he's walking
Mhm.
tall. He boasts his success in the Stepstones, proclaims he's been crowned King of the Narrow Sea, hence the name of the episode. He left the enemy army to rot, and as the room holds its breath to see if he will dare insist on keeping his title or crown, gives his crown and the enemy's weapon to Viserys as an act of loyalty. Viserys honestly looks relieved and welcomes his brother back to applause from everyone at court. At a mini cookout they had in the back in the Godswood, we hear we hear Viserys give his brother praise for always being the more athletic warrior type whom their mother liked more. We then see a quiet moment between Alicent and Rhaenyra, who have obviously been working on their friendship and now take solace in each other again. So, a lot to digest in these two scenes. Do like are we shocked that Damon showed up peacefully?
I wasn't shocked. Wouldn't have been shocked. I think sometimes he knows when to play a certain role,
Mm-hmm.
but then there's just something in him that he just lacks that inhibition. Like, there's just something in him that like makes him act out in different ways. So I think everyone was prepared for him to walk into the room and be like, I'm king, what's up?
Mm-hmm.
But I it didn't surprise me that he took the cooler approach and was like, let me play it a little bit differently this time.
Mhm.
Did it shock you? Were you expecting like a knockout Jack?
It would have been stupid of him to even attempt that. And I think I had to tell myself that as soon as he walked in and let the sword come up against his chest plate. I was like, he's not going to try
Mm,
nothing because everybody and their mother's in here is going to throw down for the king, right? And he's here by
mm-hmm.
himself. The only way out of it would be to have his dragon rain down fire on the Red Keep, and he's not going to do that. Like, Damon is
Yeah,
an agent of chaos, but he's not going to do that
true,
without being directly provoked, in my opinion. I think he could.
true.
I don't think he'll just do it just for shits and giggles. So I
Hmm.
wasn't necessarily shocked that he came peacefully per se, but I did expect a little bit more of a showing out from him. I expected him to
Yeah.
make Viserys work for it a little bit more, and he didn't. He didn't do that the way
Nah,
it is.
I
So,
think it was too much of an audience. I don't think he
mhm.
had the fresh cut. It looked like Chorus or Lenor might have cut his hair for him. You know what I'm
That's
saying?
funny.
He was
That's funny.
he was feeling himself. You know what I'm saying? He had the side shaved down a little bit.
He had a
He
little
was
white
feeling
boy fade.
fresh.
He did, yeah.
He really
Hmm.
did. You know what I'm saying? He was out here hanging out with the brothers and shit. So he pulled up with new swag. He's like, all right, man,
We
we're
should
gonna do
probably
this a
be
little bit
glad he didn't
different.
show up with dreads. He seems like the type that would do it. Damon?
Right. I would enjoy it though. I would absolutely. I'm here for it. Let's see it. Let's see
That's
it.
funny. One other thing that stood out to me about this sequence particularly is like that's the like King Viserys was introducing his brother to his new wife. Like Damon's been gone since he's been married.
Yeah, and we're assuming that he missed the wedding altogether since he needs to be introduced and everything. So I think it also just emphasizes the passage of time, right?
Hmm.
Damon's missed the wedding, missed the birth of two
Two
children.
children.
So, it I love that it's a subtle way of putting it in there, like,
Hmm.
look how much you've missed. And
Yeah,
then they're like hanging out like two bros, like, and she's like,
literally.
why don't we Allison's like, let's go look at the tapestry. And Viserys is like, ain't nobody trying to look at no damn tapestries. More wine. Like, I was like, bro.
I found that scene very endearing because it felt
It's
more,
sweet.
yeah, to me it was more like you don't know my brother. He does not want to look like no damn tapestries, right? But I also love like it clicked hearing Viserys talk about Daemon when they were boys, right? When they were
Mm,
children and the affection their mother had for him and everything. I was like, it clicked immediately. Oh, he's introducing his wife to his brother. And so I thought that whole scene was really cute.
it
Thought so. It was
was
a nice
nice.
little moment
Short
until
lived, but nice.
it's short lived, especially because as soon as Rhaenyra walked up, King Viserys was just like, "What?" He didn't say that, but the look on his face was just like, "What?" Like, come on.
But
Um,
he's definitely having like his Cersei phase where it's like he's drinking more, he's losing his mind. Like, I'm just like, let's ease off on the bruise, bro. Like, let's
I mean,
reel it in.
can you blame him?
Yes.
He's not okay. Okay, really quickly, quick sidebar. Let's run down the state that Viserys is in right now, right?
Yeah.
He lost the love of his life, right?
Yeah.
He was going to lose her anyway, but a piece of him also feels guilty for how she died because he
Yeah.
forced the maester to try to pull the baby out. That baby also died, right? The heir that he
Mm.
finally got died. Rhaenyra can't stand him because he's trying to marry her off and she won't listen to him. She's being so insubordinate.
She
He
quit
has
the
that.
tour.
She quit the tour. She, broke up the band, whatever. She's doing this while he understands that he needs to marry her off ASAP in order to make sure she produces an heir because it would solidify her claim, right?
Yeah.
So there's all that in the back of his brain. His brother, for 4 years, were off being super insubordinate and being crazy. Then he has his like hand of the king who's constantly trying to get somebody with the high tower blood on the throne. Like he has all these things happening to him. He deserves
And
a
the
glass of
realm.
wine. Right.
Yeah. And the
And the
realm is
realm.
expecting him to like denounce Rhaenyra, basically. and raise up Aegon. And he's just like, yeah, he is under a lot of stress. He's going through a lot.
The richest family won't talk to him.
Yeah,
There's a lot happening. He deserves some wine.
there's a lot.
And on top of that, he can't heal a paper cut. Okay. So he thinks he's
Ooh,
dying,
he's
right?
literally falling apart.
He's literally falling
Literally
apart.
falling apart.
And it's really sad to watch. You see it in many instances in this episode. We'll talk about it, especially when we get to Allison and him together. But the king is falling apart, and it's setting up the stage for some really good Dance of the Dragons. I feel like this is setting it up really well. Anyways,
Absolutely. Yeah.
let's dig into Allison and Rhaenyra specifically, because we also see that quiet moment between the two of them. How did you feel
Mhm.
seeing them talk like old friends again?
Um, I don't know if I would classify it as talking as like old friends. I
Okay.
feel like they I feel like that's probably one of the first conversations that they've truly had since all of this stuff went down.
Mm,
And because you can the because I felt like they were so disconnected from the way each other was feeling. Like Allison is like, man, you're complaining about being on tour. Oh my gosh, must be nice to have choices. Wow. And then Rhaenyra's like, man, to be cooped up in a palace just popping out babies, I would hate that life. And it's just like, can y'all read each other's rooms? Like, I don't know. So that's the way I took it. I felt like it was the first time that they were actually trying to connect, trying to
mm-hmm,
get that friendship back. But it was nice to see them acknowledge that I miss you.
mm-hmm,
Like, I wish we didn't have to go through all this. And you can see that they both feel like they are pawns that are just being moved around in this big old Game of Thrones, right? Like they are expected to play these roles. Allison is folding into her role way more than Rhaenyra is.
mm-hmm.
Um, and it's created this rift between these two young ladies, right? So it's nice to see that hopefully they can come together somewhat because Allison is clearly lonely as hell. She ain't got no friends. Like she ain't got nobody to talk to. So it, I'm hoping I'm hoping they can work something out.
I agree. It's very obvious she's lonely, and it's like Allison also has to balance a bunch of different things. She's basically balancing three different identities, right? She's the queen, she's the
Mm,
princess's best friend, and she's also the daughter of the hand. And just one of those things by itself will be enough to like is a title and a responsibility in itself. But to be all three and to
yeah,
also be like the mother of the potential heir that people are talking about, like there's a lot of responsibility and a lot of, I don't want to use this phrase because I don't want to like co-opt it, but she's flipping from identity to identity pretty regularly, and I bet she's like super confused in addition to being
yeah.
lonely. So I feel for
Okay.
her.
She's balancing quite a lot for sure.
She definitely is. So moving forward, Rhaenyra calls Damon out in like a quiet little scene with just niece and uncle. I'm gonna start calling them that now for this episode, and you all know why. Niece and uncle are out in the backyard chilling, and she calls him out on taunting her father, basically, and asks like what he wants. She knows him. She's like, "What do you want? What are you doing here? This is not your cup of tea. Like, just let's get to it." He denies that he wants anything, says he just wants to be home. But and they both comment that they both have matured since they last saw each other. Red flag number one. Um, she complains about having to marry for political reasons, and he gives her some pretty sound advice, in my opinion. He basically tells her to not live her life in fear, for she'll forsake the best parts of it.
Mm,
And then later, quick scene after this, we see a council meeting where Viserys learns that Corlys plans to marry his daughter to the Sea Lord of Bravos, and it's obvious from the conversation that the need for Rhaenyra to marry is more apparent than ever. So let's pause there before we get into the meat of the episode.
yes, yes.
Um, it at first watch, it's nice seeing Damon and Rhaenyra talk to each other and just like she knows him, right? Like it
Mhm.
almost feels like she knows him better than his brother does.
Mhm.
What are your
Oh,
thoughts about that?
100%.
You think so?
100%. Yeah. First of all, she's still wearing the necklace, and he's like, fondling the necklace, right? And I was just like, it's like I
Red flag
oh,
number 2.
knew it. But
We called that. We definitely did call that.
we did. But it's nice to see them bonding and trying to figure things out. I think, like you said, he gave her some sound advice, which is like, man, you keep living in fear, like you're never gonna really live your life.
Mhm.
Um, and he and I don't. His poor wife back in the well, maybe not his poor wife, because maybe she'd be worse off if he was actually there. Like, the veil, chilling, doing Lord knows what, and and he's
Jumping
just
over the
out
moon
here.
door.
Listen, and he's just out here running around living his best life. And he's like, man, go ahead, get married, and just do whatever you want to do. And you can see here that Rhaenyra clearly has more honor than he does, because she's like, no, like that doesn't make sense. Like I'd rather just be single and like die an old minstrel or something like that, right?
Mhm. I
Rather
can do
than
that all
like
by myself, basically.
right, rather than get married and just be out here BSing. It's just like, I guess, sure. So I mean, and it's clear and I've said this since day one. It's clear they have chemistry between them,
Mhm.
and it's very apparent here for sure. It's like, my, how you've grown.
Mhm. One thing
Somebody
that's
turned 18.
I know, right? Is she even 18 yet? I don't know. It doesn't matter because it's in our world, 18 matters. In their world, it doesn't mean anything, right?
It does not.
Except that she's too old and she should have been married already. One thing that
Yeah,
stood out, especially on the rewatch, was that he called his wife the bronze B
bronze
word, I
bitch.
think. Yeah.
Yeah.
And I was like, what an interesting thing to call out her hair color or like her overall look. Um, to me, that was a direct tie-in to her like not being blonde like a Targaryen. And that just felt like on a rewatch, another like, huh, I see
Mhm.
what you're trying to set up here. Trying to suggest that like you don't like her because she's a brunette, which means that you'd prefer someone who wasn't, which would be a blonde, and who's blonder than a Targaryen, right?
Mhm.
So I don't know. Maybe it's me overthinking or overlooking looking into it a little bit too much, but that stood out to me on the rewatch. What also stood out is that I believe that Damon actually cares about her.
Absolutely.
We're going to talk about like some potential political moves he's going to make in a minute, but I think it's really apparent he cares about her, especially the way he reacted to her mentioning her mom dying from having to produce heirs. I thought his response was more thoughtful than I was expecting to come out of his mouth. I mean, he didn't stay in that space for long. He immediately like brought it back to reality, but he seems like he cares, and that I mean that makes all of this so complicated, doesn't it?
100%. 100%.
And then finally with the council scene, um Corliss is out here playing chess while everybody else is playing checkers. And I just wanted to call that out, that the richest man in the realm is out here dancing circles around the
Yeah,
king. Mm,
absolutely. He's been snubbed by the king. They just won this war. He's got dragons in his family. And now he's heading over to Bravos and being like, what's good? You know. And you gotta remember there's money over in Bravos too, right? The
oh, so
Iron
much
Bank is
money.
over there. And so if uh pursue this marriage and actually successfully uh negotiate this marriage, then that is going to elevate him even more and make him more of a threat to the Targaryens and to Viserys in particular. So he's out here, he's not playing around. He said, listen, I offered up my daughter, you turned her down. I gotta find a worthy match. And I
Hmm.
gotta make it make sense. He's not on the council anymore. He's not, part of that world really anymore.
Mm-mm.
So you gotta get in where you fit in.
I know that's right. And the Essos got money. They got the slave trade over there too. So
Mm-hmm.
that's plenty of, I hate to say it this way, but he got ships and they got slaves. So do with that math what you will. He gonna make some money. Okay. Look at you. I know. It's awful, but it's true. Economics, okay?
Damn, damn,
It's
T.
true. It is
but, go,
true.
but go ahead.
Okay. Now we get to the part of the episode that everybody wants to talk about, right?
Yes.
Okay. So later that evening, Rhaenyra finds a bag in her room with street clothes in it and a map telling her about a secret passage behind her bed that takes her through the walls of the castle, down to the basement where the dragon skulls are kept, and outside the back of the castle where good old Uncle Damon is waiting for her. Damon takes her through the streets of King's Landing, where Rhaenyra sees the common people having fun, presumably for the first time in her life. I'm guessing this is her first time doing something like this. She catches a play, she tries the street food, she has a lot of wine, a lot of drinks, and is eventually led by her uncle to a pleasure house. At the pleasure house, Damon takes off Rhaenyra's hat so her identity is exposed and makes a move on Rhaenyra by kissing her and engaging in some heated second base action. When Rhaenyra gets into Damon, when Rhaenyra gets into it, Damon stops and leaves her at the pleasure house. She makes her way back to the Red Keep and takes Sir Kristen in her bed.
Yes, yes. Yes, yes. The
Um,
chat
where
was lighting up.
where should we start with this? Um, whew.
Let's. I want to start with. I thoroughly enjoyed seeing her enjoy her freedom of being out and about in the streets and
Agree.
presumably unrecognizable, at least by the common people. She does get recognized by one of the like King's Guards or something like
Hmm.
that. But everyone else like thinks she's some little boy running around or something, but nobody recognizes her. So it gives her this freedom. It's almost like when Princess Jasmine snuck out
I was just about to
and
say
she,
that. Yeah.
and she was out here in the streets. So it was nice to see her get a taste of the freedom that she has been longing for so long.
Taste. She got a whole bottle. She went from 0 to 60 in like 20 seconds on the show.
I mean, go hard or go home. Like
Okay.
when's the next time she gonna be able to do this again?
That's a good point.
So she might as well, you know what I'm saying? Uncle Day Day was like, look, get dressed. We going to a strip club. I'm gonna show you what real life is like. It's like that uncle that gives you your first taste of alcohol. Like, ooh. I want to put it out there. I am that auntie now. I feel
You
like,
took
you
her
ever had
straight to.
champagne? Come
Oh,
here.
yeah. My grandfather did that with me. My grandfather did it, and he did it on New Year's Eve with all the grandkids at one time. And we were like, I don't
I'm
know if our
the
mother would let us do it. He's like, I'm your mama's daddy. She got to listen to me. And I was like, I'm sure that's not how that works, but I'm going to drink this.
I'm definitely
Um,
that big cousin now. I'd be like, try give it a taste. Go ahead.
so Damon took her to King of Diamonds and it was just like,
Ba-
let's do this. Where do I want to start? Okay. So yes, I agree with you. It was nice seeing her have fun, and there were even some lessons in that, right? Like with the
Yeah.
mummers play.
Hmm.
Damon clearly wanted her to see that the people don't respect her claim as heir at all, and they would
Hmm.
prefer to have a man on the throne. And he's teaching her a lesson, like what they care
Yeah.
about does matter. Like why would you rule them if you don't care about what they care about?
Yeah.
So there
It's like,
was
oh,
some
it doesn't
lessons.
matter. Like, yeah, it does.
It does.
Perception goes a long way.
Yeah.
You should know what your subjects actually think of you. And
Hmm.
I think that's where Joffrey failed as well, too, right?
And
Joffrey and Cersei is
Cersei
like,
and everybody, yeah, all of
yeah,
them. Yeah.
they just did not understand that we hate
Yeah.
you.
Yeah.
Sorry, go ahead.
So, I wanted to call out that dichotomy of like obviously he took advantage of her and we'll get to that and like right now. But there was also some lessons in that. And so let's talk about him taking advantage of her. Do you think he took advantage of her?
In what way?
So I left the episode thinking about like our perceptions of like you and I in this age, this year, how we think about sex, how we think about age, how we think about these sort of relationships, you know, consent versus not consent, grooming, all of these things, how that's most likely different in their world, as in people aren't calling it out. But I guess my question is, okay, we know the Targaryens, they mess with each other. That actually didn't bother me. Like I was just like, oh, Targaryens do this, like whatever, that's regular. Her being young and him being older, again, she's 17. He acts like he's 15. Also didn't bother me. What kind of like resonated with me as a it just me and as an individual was like him like leading her to it made me so uncomfortable, like this like grooming of it. I guess grooming would mean that I do have an issue with their age, right?
Yeah.
I gotta think about that. So maybe I'm not as progressive as I thought when it comes to the Targaryens.
The only the only part that bothered me is that it was clear that he was setting her up to be seen. If we're talking about taking advantage, that's the only part that I felt like he took advantage of her. Is
Mm,
when it was like, I'm gonna lure you out into this freedom, give you a taste, have you feeling good, get you all these drinks, right, and all this stuff. You're open to all these experiences and everything happening right now, and then okay, this is my moment to strike, right? Versus if they had had a quiet moment in the red keep and then ended up like smashing or having an embrace or something like that. you he was It was clearly a setup, because as soon as you're walking into a crowded brothel
mm-hmm,
and then you're pulling off her hat so that everyone can see who this person is, there's no question about it, and everybody sees who you are.
mm-hmm,
So to me, that was the taking advantage part. I
mm-hmm.
always thought there was chemistry there. I always thought it was coming, but I think there actually still is a genuine love and a genuine care there. But I think he is being manipulative in the way he's going about the relationship.
I would
That
agree with
was
that.
my issue.
I would agree with that. I do think I do have a slight issue with him like getting her drunk to get her loose enough to do that stuff. But I guess to your point, he did it so that he can expose her in that place,
Hmm.
to turn it into a scandal. So presumably he'd have the opportunity to marry her, right?
Yeah,
Um,
exactly.
yeah. So here's my other question to you. How far in advance do you think Damon is thinking?
That's a good question.
That just
I don't
occurred to
think
me just now. Yeah.
I don't think far enough.
Mm,
I'll say that much. I don't think far enough. Um, I think a lot of times he gets these
inspiration.
plans, these bouts of inspiration, and
Yeah.
he's just like, this could work.
Yep.
Let's try it.
Mhm.
And doesn't really think about much of the fallout or the consequence or anything like that, right? Um, because again, he's doing this thing and he's doing it so publicly and
Mhm.
so um just in a way that would be damaging to her reputation, right? It's
Yep.
not one of her maids caught him in her bed or caught them like holding hands or something like that. You know what I mean? It's you're in the as, as Otto would say, in the bowels of a brothel
Mhm.
coupling.
Coupling.
Like
Say it.
coupling. So to me that was yeah, yeah. I
So
didn't yeah, that was
I'm
the thing.
under the impression that like his actions are premeditated, but only like he thought about it like 2 seconds before.
Yeah,
That's how it feels to me. Like
essentially.
it feels like he got like I don't know that I believe that he called her out with the intention of taking her to a brothel and exposing her and like causing this rumor to be circulating. It
Hmm.
could happen. That doesn't seem like his style to think that far in advance, even like one evening. So to me, like my educated guess would be, or educated, there's nothing educated about this. My guess is that he got just as drunk as she did. He was drinking just as much as she did, and was just like, screw it, let's just go to a pleasure house. And then on the way in, it was like, oh, let's just take this off. But once he did that, I think at that point he knew what he was doing.
Yeah, I was gonna say I think it was a little bit more thought out than that, but maybe he was like, oh, we just gonna go have some fun, and then in the moment he got his other inspiration,
Right,
was like,
exactly.
ooh, while we out here, hold on,
I
I
can make
just
this work
thought
to
of
my
something.
advantage. Yeah. And
Right.
the reason what the thing that made me say that was that when he was after Emma and the baby died and he was drinking, I think at a brothel then, nothing about his speech seemed premeditated, right? He seems like the type to do things when he gets the inspiration, and then he just sticks with the consequences. He'll just write out the consequences
Yeah.
regardless of if he actually had the intent to do it or not. And so I guess that's why I'm getting at, like, do we think Damon planned this out? Like, this is why he came back to King's Landing. He didn't have to come back.
Yeah, yeah. I don't think he came back to King's Landing for that, but definitely as things were unfolding, he was like, "This gonna
Yeah,
work,"
this could work.
and then presses her up in the bowels of the brothel, and she turns it. Wait a minute. Then she turned around. She's like, "Ooh, I like this. Let's get it." And he's like, "Oh wait, nah, hold on, wait, time out. Tea time, tea time. Wait a minute. I need a breath. I need a breath." And could not go through with it.
Do you think he came to his senses or he couldn't get it up?
I think it was a mix of both. I don't think they're mutually exclusive. We've seen previously that he has
Mm-hmm.
some performance anxiety,
Mm-hmm.
and so, but I think also he, in a sense, was considering like, if I do this, there is no going back, and I would be potentially tarnishing her reputation and her future going forward. So I think it's a mix of both. What about
Mm-hmm.
you?
I agree. I do. I agree. I think that there was something about, like, her getting into it that, like, snapped him back to reality, and then something about that was just like he couldn't go through with it, in addition to his performance anxiety and all. Like, that's the manifestation of that, right? When he has too
Yeah.
much on his mind and he can't perform. um yeah, and I have a sneaking suspicion that's probably also why, I think I mentioned this already, that's also why he doesn't have any sons yet, or any heirs yet, any children. I wonder if his performance anxiety plays into that as well. Who knows? Maybe we'll find out. Maybe we won't. Um, yeah. And then the other thing I just want to talk about really quickly was, like, did you find it? Um, it struck me like, her having that experience with her uncle in the brothel. In my, I'm assuming her first time being exposed to sex in that way. She is pretty much led on by her uncle and then, like, abandoned in the middle of a pleasure house, right? That
Yeah.
she immediately comes home and takes Sir Kristen in her bed. And that just felt like, I'll be honest, I was like, if that was me in that situation, I don't want nobody near me for a couple of, like, days, if not weeks. But Rhaenyra is just like, no, he started something that I need someone to finish, basically.
I
And I just, that just stood out to me.
Yeah, I think it was more of something inside her had been released and been
Mm,
open. A certain freedom had been unleashed out of her.
the
And
dragon.
I think where most people might have shrunken in, she is more of like opening up and unflowering.
Mm,
Uh, and it's like, no, I like this excitement. I like this danger. I am turned on, and I need somebody to complete that. And so, who better than young Kristen? You know what I'm saying? Why not? And so that's the way I took it. It can be, I mean, I think to a lot of people, it could be a traumatic thing. It's like you're with the older guy, he takes you somewhere you never been, and then can't finish out the night, and then just leaves you, like, didn't call you an Uber, didn't leave you with nobody. There's no escort, no nothing. He's like, I don't know, find your way back. I'm like, do I still have the map? I don't know. But so I can understand how for most people, but I think for her, it was more of an unleashing of freedom for her.
I
She
like
was
that way of
excited.
thinking of it. She was excited. She was interested. She was excited. So I like that way of thinking about it. I think you're right. It unleashed the dragon in her, so to speak.
Unleash the
Um,
dragon.
have you seen the memes with like? Have you seen the
But
memes?
Cisco, you gonna make me unleash the dragon. He has owed his dues. He has
Oh my
owed his
goodness.
dues. He's the original Targaryen, if anybody was
Blonde
wondering.
hair and everything.
Platinum. Platinum.
So let's move on. So the Damon and Rhaenyra scenes of them like having fun and like pleasure house, all that stuff, are spliced between scenes of Viserys and Alicent doing their like nightly routine. So they take a bath. She bathes him. Well, she has to because the other the servants were too rough with all his open wounds and everything. She takes a quiet night and like goes to bed by herself, very peaceful. And in the middle of the night, the king summons her for sex, which she is
Mm.
clearly not into, but just has to deal with. Allison is the only person in this story that's doing their duty, in my opinion. No, she is the only one that's just like sucking it up and doing what she has to do. And
Uh, yeah, I would say the high towers got their heads on right. Allison's
mm,
like, man, I got a role to play. I'm gonna play my role, whatever. But Otto also, right, is like, I have a role to elevate my house, and I'm gonna play that role as well. So I feel like, yeah, she the only one. She's the only one. Um, and I felt bad because, and
mm,
we discussed this off camera, because I was like, there's clearly some sort of tenderness between Viserys and so part of me was kind of hoping that maybe some love had developed, but to watch her being compressed under this man who's literally like falling apart and gross, honestly. And like she's just not enjoying herself at all. And he's like, look at me. And she's like, yeah, fake smile, look away. Like it was so disheartening because I think, not that I have romanticized their relationship in my head, but I was hoping that there was a little bit more there than actually was. That girl
mm.
is miserable. I feel bad for her. She is just awful. Compared to Rhaenyra over there in Kristen's arms.
Or even in her
Having
uncle's
better
arms,
life.
honestly.
Yeah, yeah. She got options.
She
She
has
got options.
options, and her options didn't have rats like just on top of her. Like you saw the rat on their bed, right?
No.
So when you, so when when Allison was just like laying in bed afterwards and just staring up at the ceiling, there's a rat like on top of the canopy that like looks at her and then like goes away. It's super quick.
I need
I'm
to
not
rewatch this episode because
rewatch that. Yeah.
I did not catch that. That's
She
wild.
was
I did
just
not catch that at
it's
all.
just a rat just like, nah, you ain't shit, and it just like goes away. Like it's
Yikes! Oh
I
God!
thought, yeah, what I thought I was tripping the first time I saw it. I was like, was that a rat? And then when I watched it a couple of hours ago, I was like, that's a rat. Anyways, she's lonely and it's an awful existence, and I feel so bad for her, just like you said.
Yeah,
But duty is the death of love. She's just playing her part.
yeah. Versus Kristen and Rhaenyra having this sweet, romantic, almost like Disney-esque type of love affair. It's like, ooh, the knight and the princess. Yes.
The knight and the
Uh,
princess.
so, but also there can be high consequences to this, right? Kristen
Ooh.
is a is sworn into the King's Guard, he is not supposed to take any wives, not supposed to have any children, definitely not supposed to bed his
I mean,
princess.
that's the problem. I was like, why are you saying all that stuff? Like, yes, but nobody really
I mean, because
cares
those
about that.
things matter too.
As long as he doesn't have a
But
kid, it's fine. But it's like you did what with who? That's the
right.
issue there.
Scandal.
Um,
And mind you, it takes them about 20 minutes for them to get their clothes off. So you had time to think about
no,
this,
he thought about it. He
right?
thought about
Because
wanting it.
they took all of their clothes off. It's not like he just dropped trousers and was like, all right, you know.
Yeah, but then people would hear all the metal clinking. She had to take off all the armor because then people would hear the metal. Yeah.
I'm done.
She knew how to take it off too, which was interesting.
She was ready. I'm like, how do you know where all these clasps and straps and everything are, ma'am? Like, no, okay.
It's very akin to when a man can take off your bra real quick. You're like, wait a minute, how you do that? How you
How
do
did
that
you
so quick?
know?
How did you know? Exactly. All right.
Right, yeah.
So we spent some time talking about like Rhaenyra and her like coming to realize that she has power over her body and power over
Hmm.
her desires, and she can
Hmm.
choose to lean into her desires instead of always being worried about what her duty is, just opposed against Allison, who is only
Yeah.
focused on what her duty is and has not taken any time to do anything that actually pleases her. Both of
Hmm.
these people, both of these women stuck in a patriarchal society that dictates what they're able to do and when they're able to do it. In the next scene, we cut to Masseria. Remember her? She was the
Hmm.
Damon's ex who he lied about being pregnant and lied about being engaged to. We see Damon drunk, hungover on Masseria's floor, and she's come up in the world. She has her
Hmm.
own business.
Hmm.
She's no longer sleeping around for money. She's not sleeping with people for money.
That OnlyFans paid off.
Her OnlyFans played off, and now she's like selling how to start a business courses online to anyone who'd be willing to pay for it. So that's what she's doing right now. So he crashed on her floor for the night.
Yep.
And he basically keeps calling her a whore, and she's like, you don't understand, I don't like, you got to talk to me a little bit differently. And he's like, whatever. But in the background, we see a little boy come in and pay her some money. It's the same boy that we saw see Rhaenyra leave the pleasure house. So we
Hmm.
know how Masseria is making her money. She has her own little birds and she's getting paid for it.
Yes.
Right after that scene, um, we cut to Otto actually informing the king of Rhaenyra and Daemon being seen in the pleasure house, and the king is livid. He is enraged. He's angry that Otto had Rhaenyra followed. He's angry that Rhaenyra would put herself in that situation. He's angry at his brother for obvious reasons. He's angry at everyone, basically.
Hmm.
Allison overhears and confronts Rhaenyra, who swears on her mother's memory that Daemon didn't touch her.
Hmm.
I'm going to pause there.
Hmm. Hmm. Hmm.
I think the highlight of these two or three scenes is that Rhaenyra lied very easily.
I mean,
So when I first watched it, I thought she implied that Damon and her didn't have sex. And so if that is what she was swearing on, then she didn't lie. When I rewatched today, she said Damon didn't touch me, I swear on my mother's memory. Damon absolutely touched her.
what's your definition of touch?
Okay. Okay.
What's your definition of touch? um, yes, to a certain extent, she like because like at first Allison was like, "I know y'all smashed, whatever, whatever." And she's like, "No, we didn't smash."
True.
And then she was just like, "Well, tell me the story, like what went down." And she basically tells her the whole truth until they get to the pleasure house. And then she's like, "Well, we got there. He sank into his cups. He got
Mm-hmm.
super drunk and basically abandoned me for a whore, whatever." So she does not mention the kissing, the touching, the lusting, or anything like that, right? But I feel like when she's saying he didn't touch me, she's saying we didn't smash.
Sex.
There was no copulation. There was no coupling.
What
No
I'm
coupling.
what I'm saying, and it's a fine line for her to be swearing on her mother's memory, and
Yes.
it instantly brought me back to Viserys swearing on that same memory of his ex-wife, that he was not going to supplant Rhaenyra as
Yeah.
heir. And now I'm just like, is this going to come back up again from Viserys about um maybe taking it away? I don't know.
It's possible. I
I
mean,
don't know.
Viserys definitely thinks that she was out here in these streets. He's just pissed that she got caught for the most part. Uh, because Otto shows up at the crack of dawn. My man is still in his nightgown.
Mhm.
He's like, "Speak plainly, Otto. I haven't had my coffee yet. Like, let's get it cracked. Like, what are you trying to say?" Um, and it was, what was interesting to me too was when Otto was like, "Oh, she was seen in the pleasure house," and he was like,
So,
"Okay, and what are we getting? Right? You know, what are we getting?" So I was like, "Oh, so it's okay for her to like kind of be in the midst of these things, but it's just she's not supposed to participate." So I was like, "That's interesting.
mhm,
Get it? It's kind
mhm.
of cool. Okay, I like that." Um, but and then Allison, of course, is in the background listening to everything, which is like Otto. Well, I guess they sleep in different bedrooms, so maybe it didn't cross Otto's
Normally, yeah.
mind.
Mhm.
Yeah, it didn't cross Otto's mind that she would be in there. Um, but Otto really, I was gonna say Otto felt like he was doing the right thing, but let's be honest, Otto
I
was
thought
working in
so.
favor of himself. Yeah, once we realized that like the little boy was running back and forth between Otto and Masseria, it was like, okay,
Mhm.
yeah, you're not doing this because you're trying to be a good hand. You're doing this because you're trying to, sow discord between everything, and then try to have Aegon, risen up and all that stuff.
Yep.
So,
He is. Like, this second brother is ambitious as hell. And here's the other thing, like the High Towers are super old family, super respected.
mhm.
You have Old Town. What why are you risking all of this just to, I mean, I get it.
Because
To get,
why not?
I guess. Yeah. Yeah, yeah, yeah,
Because
yeah.
he's so close. You gotta figure,
So
you are
close.
so close. Your daughter just gave birth to the only male heir. It's right there.
That's a good
When you're
point.
the hand? Oh, come on.
That's a great point.
Come on.
Well, um, so Viserys confronts his brother in the throne room. Damon doesn't deny that he has sex with Rhaenyra. In fact, he suggests that marrying Rhaenyra to him would make the family stronger than ever. Viserys takes this as a plot for Damon to end up on the throne and banishes him from King's Landing. Alicent assures the king that she believes Rhaenyra while suggesting Damon lied to get a rise out of him. When Viserys finally talks to Rhaenyra, he reminds her of the importance of them being on the throne by recounting the Song of the Ice and Fire prophecy and confronts her on being reckless. He forces her to marry Corlys' son, and she agrees, but only if he fires Otto. Viserys confronts Otto on his plots and schemes and fires him as Hand of the King. The last scene of the episode shows Rhaenyra being sent moon tea by the king.
For those who don't know, it's abortion tea. It's Plan B.
Basically plan B. Yeah, he sent her to plan B and basically didn't tell the maester to stick around and watch her take it because he left, right? You know.
Yeah. But yeah, man. I mean, Damon's hungover, literally dragged into the throne room. And so what I took away from this scene is when Viserys is like, "Hey, you did this thing, blah blah blah," and he's not denying it. And then Viserys is like, "You're not even gonna deny it." It instantly made me think of the whole Air for a Day debacle, and I was just like,
I brought that
"Did
up.
Damon really say this?"
I
Like,
called it.
yeah, I was just like, man, I don't. at this point, I don't know if he really said it. And I think sometimes he plays into like, well, you're going to believe everyone else over me anyways, so
Mhm.
I'm not going to fight this. Let me just play the hands that I'm dealt. You think I did this? Cool. Let me marry her.
Mhm.
Like, you know what I mean? So it is definitely, I feel like he never said air for a day.
I don't think he said it either.
Yeah, I don't think it happened. Um, I don't. Watching this whole thing unfold, I was like, Damien maybe is not as vicious. Well, is not as vicious as we think he is, at least when it comes to his family. You know what I'm saying?
I mean, that's what we would think based off of how he treats Rhaenyra in their quiet moments, and
Hmm.
even how he treats his brother in their quiet moments. He seems fine. It only seems like when he feels like his brother is coming at him, does Damon feel like he needs to like show out and like show like some power of some sort.
Yeah.
So I agree. I don't think he said the air for a day thing because obviously he didn't sleep with Rhaenyra because he couldn't get it up. Um, so yeah, so I think what struck me about that scene was that Damon was drunk and hungover on the floor, and
Hmm.
he was owning that scene. He owned that conversation.
Hmm.
He absolutely he knows his brother. He was not even afraid when the king put a knife to his throat. He just kept talking through it. Like
No
it's
fear.
clear he has no fear of his brother, and that made him like he was commanding that dynamic.
Yeah.
Um so yeah, I thought that was really interesting.
Mhm.
So Damon suggested that Viserys marry Rhaenyra off to him. Who do you think is a stronger match, Damon or Lenore?
A s- a stronger match or a better match for the realm?
How is
I feel like
that?
it's different. If you're
Mm,
talking about pure strength, it would make sense to marry Daemon to Rhaenyra. They're both dragon riders. They're both Targaryens. You're
Lenore
keeping
is a
the
dragon
bloodline.
rider and half Targaryen.
I'm gonna get to it. You're keeping
Okay,
it in the
sorry. Sorry.
bloodline.
Sorry.
You're keeping it in the bloodline. Um, and they are both closer in relation to the actual king currently.
Mhm.
It would, I think it would show immense strength and power, especially because people already fear Damon. People fear Damon, but Rhaenyra's got the smarts and the wits and the wisdom about her that together it could be a super strong match. Now, I think what the problem is that you try to put them together, it might generate so much fear that the realm might push back against it. I think it would cause a lot of instability in the realm versus if you choose someone like Lenore, where it's like, all right, cool, he's battle tested, but as far as we know, he's not this impulsive kind of, scary guy or whatever, right? But now you're also bringing the Valerians back in. They've got the money and all that stuff. So now you're combining those two. I think the realm would be more accepting of a Lenore and Rhaenyra match versus a Daemon and Rhaenyra match. I think that would send the realm in a spiral.
I think I agree with your outcome. I have slightly different observations about it. I think that yes, Lenore is the better option for everybody involved. Not only for everything that you mentioned, but his parents will probably have a longer lifespan than the king. And I think the realm would trust that his parents are guiding them in a way that makes the most sense since you have Valerian and Targaryen blood, who sat on the council, who was groomed to be queen, like all of that stuff. I, with Damon and Rhaenyra, what sticks out to me the most is that if they were to wed and she were to become queen and him king consort, technically, he's not listening to her. There's
Mm,
no way. Like you mentioned that like she can check him. He's not listening to her in any way, shape, or form. He's gonna do everything that he wants when he wants. And I think that a daughter and an uncle compared to a true born son, there's no comparison. Like
You know, I feel like she could probably reel him into a certain level is because I think he would be the type to start ruling and be like, "Ooh, I don't want to do this. This is a lot of
Mm.
politicking. This is a lot of bureaucracy. This is a lot of paperwork.
Mm-hmm.
I don't like this."
Mm-hmm.
And so I think he would be somewhat okay falling back a little bit. That's what I think. But like I think there's such a rift between the Targaryens and Valerians that to bring more stability to the realm, they would have to repair that relationship.
Absolutely.
I think that's
Absolutely.
what you got to bring the Valerians back on deck because especially if they're gonna marry the daughter to Bravos.
Mm-hmm.
Oh no, you got to get them back on your side. So
Mm-hmm.
yeah, I don't think Damon should be considered at all
Got it.
whatsoever.
Um, I just thought I thought it was an interesting thought experiment. I
Yeah,
don't know that
absolutely.
I absolutely think Lenore is the better option, but I was
I
like,
don't.
Damon's also not a bad idea. Kicking it over to Otto though, was it the right call to fire Otto? I think so.
Was it what?
The right call to fire Otto.
Yeah. Yeah. I will say this, right? Even though Otto was self serving, it wasn't to the detriment of the realm. You know what I mean? Like, I don't feel like he ever pushed Viserys to make a move that would have screwed up the realm royally. Like, I don't believe that. So to me, I still feel like in a sense there's still some loyalty to the realm, but it's still like, well, I'm gonna still do what I need to do for my family though.
The problem here is that Otto, every move that Otto makes, he has a point. Like
Yeah.
it's that's the issue here. It's like you spying on Rhaenyra is bad, but you running and telling the king that there's a rumor now that people saw her was the right thing to do. I think to your point about like not spinning the realm out of control, him sending Alicent to his bedchamber right after his wife died was a calculated move.
Yeah.
That was
Yeah.
absolutely calculated. And I don't think that that was in the realm's best interest at all.
Why
That was in
not?
because he knows that deep down Allison is not the perfect match for the king. He knew that then. He knew then it was probably Corliss's daughter.
But here's the thing, right? Yes, it was.
So it
But
always was her, yeah.
it was, but something needed to pull him out of his grief to get him to the point of considering Corliss's daughter, and that was Allison.
Fine.
Otherwise, he would still be in his pajamas with his back rotten over his little Lego model. Like he would have never left his room.
Maybe.
So
Fine. 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 Okay, fine. Otto needed to go though, so I'm glad he got rid of him.
yeah, he did. He did.
I'm actually shocked that Viserys actually got rid of him, honestly.
Yes.
Who do we think he's gonna replace him with?
I feel like the only real option is Lionel Strong, the guy who was
I
telling him
agree.
to marry Lenora in the first place.
I agree that that is the best option for him. I was thinking about this. If Damon hadn't done what he did, I wonder if Viserys would have considered Damon to be his hand finally.
Yeah, that could
Right?
have. That's a good point. He would have at least been in the conversation.
He would have
I don't
absolutely
know.
been in the conversation.
I don't know if he would have picked him, but he would have been in the conversation for sure. But man, Damon's stay messing up. He's just that little brother that just can't get it together.
Yeah, he's the
Oh,
brother that you give the controller to that's not plugged in so that he can act like he's playing, but he's not actually actually playing. Okay, let's wrap
but
this up.
I don't think Otto's going anywhere though. I think Otto's still gonna be around. I don't
He's
know in
gonna
what
work through
capacity.
He's gonna work through Allison. That's all he's gonna
Yeah,
do.
I don't know what capacity. They might be writing letters,
Hmm.
back and forth and figuring things out. But he's definitely still gonna be a major player. This is not the last of Otto.
No, this is not the
Yeah.
last of Otto. Um, did Rhaenyra take the moon tea?
I feel like it's a double edged sword. I feel like if she takes it, it's like admitting, yeah, I smashed. But if she doesn't take it and she does get pregnant, it's like, yeah, I smashed. So I would I would hope for her sake that she takes it and just plays it off as like, I didn't do anything, but I know if I didn't take it, I'd be disobeying my king, and I'm here to follow orders now. Like, that's at least that's how I would play it.
I just think
What do
it's
you
a
think?
I think it's a really interesting thought experiment to be like, if she didn't take it and she wound up pregnant, everyone would think it's Damon's kid. Damon would be the only one besides her that knows that it's not. And
Hmm.
to me, it's like, would Damon snitch, or would he just say
No,
that that's his kid? He would just say it's
he
his
would he
kid.
would marry her. He would marry her and say that's his kid, and then give her a real kid.
Yep,
That's what he would do.
yep. So I just thought that was interesting. Well, we're gonna find out next time on Dragon Ball Z whether
Yeah,
whether she takes the moon. Well, maybe we won't know, but I mean, presumably we'll learn if she's pregnant or not. So
yeah.
that'll come out. Who do you think of the MVP of the episode was?
I'm gonna say the MVP was Rhaenyra for sure. Um, she she got to get a taste of freedom, have some fun, got to dibble dabble with her uncle, which she's probably been thinking about forever at this point.
Hmm.
But then also got to actually make love with the good guy, right? She got to mess around with the bad boy, but then got to actually, ride the dragon, so to speak, with the good guy. And so, and then, I mean, yes, she's being forced to marry Lenore, but let's be honest, Lenore is not the worst match that she could have made.
We don't know. He could be a complete monster. He could be a
Good point.
Ramsey, and we don't even know.
Good point. Good point. Okay, I'll give you that. I give you that. I guess
I
on
doubt
paper,
it, but yeah.
I guess on paper it could be worse.
Hmm.
Um, and oh, there was something else I was gonna say too.
Sorry.
No, you're good. She gets to see the actual prophecy on the blade. Uh, fire. She still hasn't been supplanted as heir.
That's always a
Even though
win.
she did all this, she still hasn't been supplanted as heir. She still gets to maintain her position. So I think she came out on top, literally and figuratively. So yeah, I'm gonna go with Rhaenyra. What about
I would
you?
I would
Yeah.
agree with you for all the reasons, and add that she also has her best friend back.
Just back. Mm,
I mean, she has a friend
the jury's out
again.
for me. Yeah, the jury's out for me on that. But at least they're on better terms. I'll put it that way. They're on better terms.
Fine.
Eh,
Um, looking forward to the next episode. In the trailer for the next episode, we hear Viserys proposing a marriage, who we assume is to the sea snake and his family. He mentions marrying dragon riders, I believe, and how strong that would make the houses. We also see Rhaenyra warn Corlys that Rhaenyra's claim as heir will be challenged. So,
Rhaenys,
Rhaenys, what did I say?
Rhaenyra's.
Rhaenys.
I don't want
That
to get them to be. I'd be confused. I don't want everybody else to be confused. They'll be like,
Let me
wait.
do that again. We also see
You're good.
Rhaenys warn Corlys that
Yes.
Rhaenyra's claim as heir would be challenged. And I think that's super interesting that they're going to be discussing that when considering whether it makes sense for them
Mm.
to marry Lenore to Rhaenyra. Do they want to be bothered with that? Is the question there.
They're
And
not trying to get
finally,
their black son shot.
exactly, exactly. And finally, we see Otto tell Allison to prepare little baby Aegon to rule because he senses
Mm-hmm.
some trouble on the horizon as well.
Yep.
So next episode is shaping up to be another really good political drama of
Yeah.
decisions, plots, and schemes. And I'm excited to see Rhaenyra and Lenore together on the screen together.
Yeah, I want to see if there's some chemistry there. I want to see if maybe they could really build something. I want to see if Rhaenys is even going to let them get married.
Mm-hmm.
Um, or, what Corliss's response is going to be. I feel like he's going to have some slick remarks. I'm ready to
Mm-hmm.
hear him. So I'm excited for next week. The show just keeps getting better and better with each episode, and I'm excited for sure.
Agree. I'm excited. I mean, we are 4 episodes in and I'm still not 100. I mean, I'm happy to be back, but I'm willing to forgive. I won't forget the last season of Game of Thrones, but at this point I'm willing to forgive. So that's where I'm at right now. And
I'm gonna
House
let
of
it
the
go.
Dragons is I'm not letting it go. I'm the first time they mess up, I'm bringing it up. I'm that person.
Oh
Okay.
man, please.
I thought you said you was gonna bring this up no more. I thought you said you wasn't gonna do this no more.
Well,
Okay.
there you go.
Um, but I'm so glad we're back and I'm
Yeah,
enjoying the ride.
absolutely. Well, guys, thanks for joining us again today. Please stay tuned. We'll be bringing you our thoughts, more thoughts on House of the Dragon as the season continues. It's heating up, y'all. So stay tuned with us. Like, subscribe, follow us, do all the things. We're on Instagram, casual at casual fangirls underscore. We're on YouTube, casual fangirls. We love what we do and we love these stories. And we hope you guys enjoy them too. And come back, tell your friends all the good things. And as always, I'm Nessa.
And I'm T.
And together we are the Casual Fangirls. See you next time.